back to Getting Your Ducks in a Row. Today I'm joined by Wojtek, co-director at OTG Rope Access. In this episode, Wojtek and I unpack the real risks and rewards of rope access, why it's often safer and more efficient than scaffolding or machines, and how it's helping clients across a range of industries, including construction and energy, reduce delays, increase flexibility and cut costs, all without compromising on safety. If you've ever wondered what's really going on when you see someone hanging from a rope on the side of a building, this one's for you. Enjoy. Wojtek, morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for coming on. So you've built a career working in some of the most challenging environments at height. What first drew you into rope access, and how did that journey lead you to your role at OTG?
Okay, so I came across or got familiar with rope access when I met Richard, who is director of OTG. And he was working as a subcontractor for the company that I worked for. And we were sort of thinking outside the box, how can we solve a problem in terms of access? And then I started doing a bit of reading. I'm like, oh, look, rope access might be a solution here, and that's how we met. Finished the job for us. He'd done the job for us, no problems. And then I actually approached him a few more times, on a few different occasions when I needed, rope access company. Fast forward a few years after that, he called me and said, would I be interested actually working for him? Because, he thinks it would be a good idea to work together. And I made a decision, and fast forward, we're here. So that's how it actually started. I have a background in materials engineering. I worked for an industrial cleaning company. I worked in construction. I worked in stone restoration. Lots of the work that I've done over the past years was work at height, whether it was like scaffold or MUP or general work at height. So I was quite familiar with that aspect. And every time I was looking at rope access, people carrying out rope access, I thought it's just fairly dangerous, because obviously I didn't have the understanding until I actually started working in the company, and I actually realized that it's much safer and much more efficient comparing to some other methods, namely like scaffold or mobile elevated working platforms.
Okay, and just on that, Wojtek, 'cause that's an interesting point that I wanted to mention to you, because from our previous discussions, you mentioned about it being a sort of safer and more efficient method compared to others for access, at height or whatever. And I mean, you sort of mentioned it there, where you said it seems, when you see someone effectively hanging from a building on a piece of rope, it looks very scary and dangerous. But if you could you give us a bit of an idea for how it is in certain situations safer and more efficient for a client?
Okay, so as you said, when you see someone, you probably shouldn't have used the word dandying. Well, let's say dandying from a tall building on the rope. You think, right, this guy has nerves of steel. But in reality, there's much more to it that we don't see, so first of all is your training, your competency, your gear that you have, the doubling really on safety, so with IRATA code of practice, you always use two ropes for abseiling, so that means when something goes wrong, you have the other rope, to descend, to come down. You always have IRATA 3 supervisor on site that are trained in sort of a different rescue scenarios, so with every job, before actually starting any job, you have risk assessment done, you have full methodology, you have rescue plan done, and then it's being on the occasion amended on site, if it's required, because sometimes site survey is happening a few weeks or a few months even, before a job starts. So obviously, things might change up on the roof in terms of rigging. So rescue plan or risk assessment might be modified slightly, but that's being done. And that's just before actually starting the job. And then you have your PP inspections, they're being done. You have weekly visual inspections, and then 6 monthly thorough inspections of all the equipment that we have, to include ropes, and all the sort of hardware harnesses and stuff like that. So yeah, there's quite a bit that actually goes into it. Like, before you see a person actually dangling from the building, so yeah, it's just something that I wasn't aware before. And when I started to get familiar actually with this, I was like, right, this actually makes sense. Like, and this is actually much safer way of actually approaching certain things. Obviously, there's a room for scaffold, there's a room for mutes, but I just feel there's like a, a room for actually rope access. And over the past few years, I'm trying to educate people, like, about this approach, about the method of like accessing the building, about the footprint, like, and flexibility as well. So people understand that rope access is not only for window cleaning. There's few companies around Dublin that just do window cleaning. But basically, rope access is just method of accessing. And then in terms of work, it could be anything.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And in terms of the areas that you cover, or the sort of industries that you assist with, so I imagine that the construction industry is a big sort of sector for you guys. Obviously, looking at energy as well, and even potentially entertainment. I mean, what sort of industries do you cover?
Oh, so that just goes back to what I said about versatility and also our adaptability as a company. So it's not only construction sector. Yeah, construction sector will be a big amount of work that we do. So like you're looking at mastic replacement, glazing, leak repairs, like, cladding, fixing of the cladding repairs. So quite a bit of like different work. Then you have then you have your energy, as you mentioned, like, so it could be lots of things. Like, we work for ESB in Ireland, doing some maintenance or inspections on power stations, dams, and stuff like that. Like, facility management companies. That's a big sort of a market share as well. Like, for the same reason I might have mentioned before. Um, the quick turnaround. So let's say if there's a leak on the apartment block, obviously, like, person have water going into their apartment, and they need to resolve it quickly. The building is landlocked, so they can't access it with the machine. Building a scaffold would be probably thousands, if not tens of thousands, euro, and we can go in, carry out the inspection, and actually do minor repairs within a day. So in terms, like, you're looking at very sort of a quick turnaround, and very quick response. And I think this is what they need.
And I suppose the alternative there, so the situation you've been given, if we didn't have rope access, just as an example, the alternative would be a day to put up the scaffolding, a day to do the work, a day to take it down, and obviously the lag time in between those things happening. Whereas by the sound of it, with what you guys can do and with rope access, you can get access very quickly. It's obviously, very safe and efficient. And we'll come on to the safety stuff in a minute, because I do want to sort of drill down a bit more on the sort of industry standards for that. But it essentially, it has its place, and perhaps a bigger place than people might think, and it should be considered along with other default options like scaffolding, for example, for the right job.
Absolutely. Like there's a place for any of those ways of accessing, like, so obviously for bigger projects, scaffolds is a no-brainer. Like, for smaller building, when we're talking 3, 4 story, I'd say your machine will be way better solution than getting rope access, guys. But for the example that I've just given, like, before, let's say you have landlocked apartment and you need very sort of a quick turnaround, like, you have person screaming that there's water going into the apartment, you have to fix the seals, change the gaskets, or replace the window. This is where sort of a rope access comes very, very handy, like, for them few reasons. Legalization is very, very quick, it's very efficient, very safe, and yeah, quick turnaround, really, like, and then I would say cost effective as well, comparing to other methods, like, so Yeah.
And on the safety side, Wojtek, I imagine that there are industry standards here, and I can see it being a heavily sort of regulated area. I mean, how do you manage those standards, and also, how do those standards and your own company culture? You mentioned about over the ground OTG and its culture. How do you ensure that your teams are protected while working in high risk situations?
So first of all, with like OTG, we like safety for us is not only a requirement, it's a foundation of everything we do. And and like any sort of a work at height, should be like that. It's a high risk environment, so like your commitment to safety should be top of the list, really, So in terms of compliance, you have your IRATA certification code of practice, and you always uh, abide this, So this is actually just the foundation of everything we do. So every rope access technician have to be IRATA certified. Now, this certification is something that has to be renewed every sort of a 3 years. And every sort of a 3 years, they have an option, to progress to higher levels if they want to. And or they can just stay at the same level, if this is what they prefer. So you have that certification. Then you have your risk assessment method statement, being written down before every single job. The only exception would be rescue. When we have to attend rescue scenario, we'll have risk assessment that is generic. We obviously send that over and then change it as required. But this is the only sort of a scenario that we might be actually rushing, just to sort of help the person, um, rather than going through the sort of a safety folders. Um, so other trainings that we require, obviously working in construction in Ireland, work at height regulations, safe passes, manual handling, confined space, because this is the part of the services that we provide, and even combining rope access with confined space, which is probably the most dangerous or the most tricky things you can do. Yeah, so training very important. Tracks of training, certifications, testing all the equipment, doing weekly inspections, doing 6 monthly thorough inspections. There's lots, as I said before, goes into it, but everything is necessary to keep people safe and to make sure everybody goes back home at the end of the day.
Do you mention there inspections, maintenance, event rigging? These are the types of things that you're able to do with the service you provide. Is there any, or is there a particular sort of standout project that really demonstrates what OTG is capable of?
Oh, there's definitely a few that I can think of. Um, I know we were installing, in terms of events, we're installing big banners for St. Patrick's Day in Ireland, banners that nobody would actually uh, people would say it's impossible to install them. It's very difficult. They should scrap the idea. We come up with a safe way of doing it, using rope access, and we installed it. So you can actually find those photos on LinkedIn. There were the inflatable snake installations on Central Bank building. They were massive. I think they were about 15, 20 meters long. So that was one job. We took a part in the rescue of a man stranded off the coast of Mayo, which was he swam into the cave, and got trapped there, So we were part of the team, that got the man out. What else? We were building a platform for Red Bull cliff diving, which was actually quite interesting. That was also off the coast of Mayo, for swimmers, for jumpers there. So yeah, these are a couple of things that I can think of. Cliff cleaning for county councils. Um, yeah, probably lots more, but out of those more spectacular, I would have to mention obviously industry, because yeah, they're quite interesting and quite unique as well.
I know you guys are based in Ireland. Is a lot of your work done in Ireland, or you sort of do you branch out into the UK or onto the continent?
Um, no, no, we haven't so far yet. Like we had actually a couple of inquiries, like but then there's like quite a few rope access companies in UK. We're actually friends with some of them. There's quite a few rope access company in Europe, like so it's just like I think like if we can get a share of like Irish market, we'll be happy. Having said that, like Europe is getting small. We started to getting inquiries about like different work, like in different places. I think we got inquiry from Denmark and then Frankfurt in Germany, like so that means you know the 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 the, the distance is not much of an issue anymore, and these are the inquiries from the actual people or from the customers that we worked for before. So that means like they're actually returning, they have a job somewhere else, somewhere in Europe, like they want us to help them or advise them with something.
You mentioned there the distance isn't so much of an issue, and obviously the world is becoming a lot smaller in the business sense, and we're seeing that across. I know it's not just construction that you do, but we're very much built environment, and um, you know there is a lot more business being done abroad. Obviously, although, I mean, there are a number of barriers to that, but one of the biggest things, and I imagine this is particularly in what you do, is making sure that you are adhering to the different regulations that are applicable in different countries, and that in itself is something that you need to any business, whether it's rope access, whether it's civil engineering, architecture, whatever, you need to be aware of those. And is that something that you're finding that you're having to spend a lot of time now investing in understanding regulations in different regions?
Yeah, yeah. So like in terms of regulations, like the entire European Union is very, very similar, and obviously UK, like is quite similar to obviously being part of European Union for such a long time. Um, so like ADRATA is international actually code of practice. So it's although certain countries like Germany, Spain have their own sort of like rope access qualifications, ADRATA is widely recognized there as well. But yeah, it is very important in terms of like learning European standards, norms, British standards, and then what's actually required, like to work in different countries. Same like people coming over to Ireland, like you need your safe pass, your manual handling, like as a sort of a base before you're allowed to work in the construction.
Wojtek, I'm gonna sort of transition now into the future. Is there anything that you want to cover that we haven't already covered before I do that?
Not really. Like we went through different industry that we can serve or service. Like we said that it's the robots is like very sort of like efficient, safe. That work very adaptive in terms of like what can we do, like and I always when I speak to clients, like, who are surprised, or when I hear a sentence like, oh, I didn't know you do that, like, which is actually very, very common. And I always sort of spend extra like few minutes to sort of tell the clients what can we do and how can we do it. And I always use that, compare rope access to, let's say, a ladder, or like just a way of accessing something, like, so don't think of like rope access as, I don't know, window cleaner. Just think of it as a way of getting to the point where you have to do something, whether you have to do the inspection or repair or whatever you can think of, like replace the window, replace the seal gasket. Like, this is just a way of you getting there or sending a person there. Same with confined space. So yeah, so it's just that sort of a bit of like um, information. I think it's handy, like and let people understand that it's actually quite easy. And yeah, they shouldn't be sort of a treating rope access as a last resort, or as an afterthought when they get a quotation for scaffold, saying, oh, like I'm not paying this much for it. Like, what are my other options? they should be sort of like treating it equally as an option that is available to them.
Looking ahead into the future, how do you see rope access evolving as infrastructure projects grow more complex and industries demand more cost-effective and sustainable solutions? Now, I'm keen to get your thoughts on this, Wojtek, because cost effectiveness and sustainability are two huge things, particularly in our industry, the built environment. But I think across industries, they are, sort of one of the sort of most important things running through them. But I'm also keen to get an idea from you as to how you see the future of rope access and what you'd like it to be in your respective industries.
Okay, so I think future is very bright the way I see it, like, because, in terms of the entire sort of a maintenance or um, emergency repairs, like, that's a sort of a big market share, like, and I think this is where like a true rope access comes very, very handy because of um, you know, lean mobilization. You can have two technicians in the van. They can respond to majority of problems within a day or 2 days, like, so um, sometimes that wouldn't be possible with different methods, like, that can, in terms of future, let's say combining drone inspections with rope access, where you can send the drone out to see where the problem is. And then following drone inspection, you can send rope access technician to fix it. And this all happening within day, maybe 2 days, so, time is a very, very valuable thing. And with that sort of we provide quite a bit of value, I feel, for the clients.
In terms of how your clients see that value, what are you doing as a business to make sort of the general or your sort of target audience, if I can put it that way, aware of what you guys are doing and how it can benefit them in terms of cost effectiveness and helping them be more sustainable and just generally getting things done quicker?
So I think that's the first of all, like, if we're talking about returning clients, like, and there's that sort of a trust already built, and they know they can trust us, like, and they know that majority of cases, like, we will solve the problem, like, so that's the sort of a big thing, like, they have a problem, they want to get it fixed, like, they just what they need to know is like when. So once we have that date, like, we send technicians, like, problem sorted, everybody happy, like, so I think that's where we are now, like, where like time is actually more important, or getting the problem fixed as soon as possible or as soon as it appears is actually more important than everything else, like, so that will be the main value, like, is just being sort of a effective, quick turnaround, like, and then knowing that everything is done um, in a safe way. The footprint is very small because you're talking about like two, maybe three people on the ropes in the building, fairly quick, fixing the problem, like, and then just like dismantling, like, and no signs, no machines, no road blockages. So, yeah.
Which industry do you see, from your perspective, has the most demand for this sort of service? Obviously, we've spoken about construction, we've spoken about energy, we've spoken about sort of rescue almost. You mentioned the guy, trapped in a cave off the coast. We mentioned entertainment. Is there one or two, or however many sort of industries that stand out to you as having the biggest demand for this?
It's actually very hard to answer, Jason, because like the way the client space broadens, like, it's just amazing, like, so that means, like we started like, let's say in constructions doing like all paint jobs, like, painting bridges and stuff like that, like, and then we sort of started serving facilities management companies, like, working as a maintenance crew, like, you know, cleaning windows and stuff like that. Like you have your energy sectors, you have telecoms. We've done some work on mass inspections, mass maintenance, like painting and stuff like that. Like, you know, you have um, geotechnical, you have devegetation for Irish Rail, you have uh, rock scaling, you have slope stabilization. So possibilities are pretty much endless, you know. So there's like lots of sectors. Warehousing, like, you know, it's a sort of a new addition where you see quite a few data centers popping up, like, you know, pretty much everywhere. They have big warehouses, like, you know, like miles and miles long, like, you know, with stacks of shelvings, like, you know, and robots everywhere. But like you have to service them, like, you know, you have to maintain them, you have to clean them, paint them, and stuff like that. And this is where sort of a rope access comes handy again.
Where you're very much, by the sounds of it, Wojtek, in an industry of growth, and I think the great thing about what you guys do as well, just from a business perspective, more than anything really, is you're not confined to one specific specialism. You know, like you're not confined to construction. You're not confined to rescue. You know, what you do is so um, versatile that it can be used in a variety of different sort of situations. And I think that's a great position to be in as a business.
I like you're right on that, like, you know, and I always felt strongly about this one, like, you know, and I feel like this is our unique selling point. This is like, you can say it's a niche, but like, you know, we can use the skills somewhere else, like, you know, whether it's like construction, energy, facilities management, whether it's a small job, like, you know, where someone has a problem with leaking window, or a sort of a big project where you have to replace, I don't know, number of cladding panels and stuff like that. Like, you know, we can help with all of it.
That's fantastic. Wojtek, it's been great having you on the show, and it's when we spoke originally about this and what you guys do, it's an area, and I'll you know, I've mentioned this to you before, and I'll be the first to admit, it's not a sort of an area of specialism that I'd ever really sort of thought about or come across, other than, you know, seeing a guy, as I quite eloquently put it when we started this conversation, dangling from a building. But you've educated me definitely on the variety and the, you know, the variation of needs and the sort of services you can provide to sectors across multi sort of disciplines. So thank you very much for that, and I'm sure our listeners as well will be very grateful for that. Where can we find you guys? If anyone's listening and they want to look you up, Over the Ground OTG, where can we find you?
So there, it's Over the Ground, which is the old name, like, you know, which is now converted to OTG Rope Access, but the website is still overtheground.ie. It will soon be otgropeaccess.ie. And then there's another company, which is a sister company to OTG Rope Access, that it's called otgsafetysolutions.ie. This company is looking after Polaris installations and inspections, PPE inspections, and all that, like, you know, so a bit more like work at house safety rather than rope access.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me. Chat soon. Bye.